So now that we have seen the video of the 5-minute review of the of what this chapter was, and he did it very well, I want to just add one point. He talks about the idea being that this chapter we just finished, chapter 15, was the concept of a person who is a technical Benoni. They never sinned, again, because they've done tshuva, they're not tempted by sin. So they're learning and they're doing mitzvot. So technically they're Benoni because they're not a Russia. They're certainly not a tzaddik. But how do you move from being a technical Benoni to a Benoni if one of the hallmarks of a Benoni is the struggle? So what does he have to do? And it is to go beyond comfort zone, as he mentioned. Now, how does that apply to us? I mentioned this last week, that if a person sets aside time to learn, let's say you say, okay, I know Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, I have a shir in Tanya, and that's your only Torah during the week, or Nagid. Great. And you do it, and you get to the point where you're doing it just out of rote, out of habit. Okay, maybe you like the shir and all, but it's something you do for that time. So instead, in addition to that, don't drop out. In addition to the class, you say, you know what? During the week, I'm going to learn a few psukim of Parshat Shavua. Or if I already do that, I'm going to learn just a little bit more of something else, just going beyond. So what does it mean in the Gemara? That it's not comparable. Someone learns 100 times to 101. Because again, at that time period of history, people would review their learning 100 times. Why? Keep in mind, because there were no books yet. You don't go to a library and pick out your Svarim off the shelf. It was still more or less being done verbally until the time of the Mishnah, and that they would even repeat the Mishnah 100 times to get it internalized. But they do that normally 100 times. They do it 101, they've gone out of their comfort zone, quote unquote. They've pushed the limit, and now that person is a struggle. Why? Because I'm used to doing it 100 times. If I do it an extra time, I got to push myself just one more time. That's the struggle of the Benoni, and that's what it also applies to all of us. Now, I'm going to give you 3 introductions to this next chapter, chapter 16. I'm going to give you a verbal one from me. I'm going to look at something from Rav Steinsaltz. I'm going to look at something from Rav Ginsburg. Talk about three introductions here. So on the first one, it's going to be my introduction. Everything we've said until now, in the beginning of the book, has built us up to this moment where we have a very, very strong working definition of what a Benoni is. Remember, this is the Sefer HaBeinoni. What is the Benoni? What is the struggle of the Benoni? How do we engage ourselves into the struggle? He gave us ideas also of how do we convince ourselves to continue and to do this work. And he also talked in the last chapter just mentioned of what about someone who is natural and they don't have the struggle, but it's natural. Now he's going to shift gears and ask a very basic question, which all of you may have asked yourselves at some point in your lives, maybe while we've been learning this book, maybe another point in your life. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know the difference between good and bad. I know the difference between doing mitzvot and doing averot. I know that I'm going through the motions. I don't necessarily feel that love for Hashem when I'm doing it. I go through my day. I put on the tefillin and I daven and I say brachot and I act properly in business, but I'm not necessarily doing it out of this love and strong burning love of Hashem. So now what? In other words, this is not the guy who doesn't have any struggle. It's the person now. How do we deal with when your mind isn't there? Your mind isn't into it. You can make a comparison again in a marriage when a husband comes home on his wife's birthday and has a little bag instead of wrapped, takes a little gift and kind of throws it into a happy birthday. Now, did he give her a gift? Technically, he gave her a gift. Yes. And technically, he should go to zugiyut classes, to couples therapy. But besides that, his heart wasn't into it. He knows what he's supposed to get a gift because it's her birthday. But now what? How do you get that feeling if for some reason the marriage is not the greatest marriage? In other words, what do you do with that? How do you engage your heart? So that's the first introduction. Let's take a look at what Rav Steinsaltz says. Oops, wrong. This one. I'm not doing Nehemiah. Okay, let's go to the top. Okay. Okay, let me read this to you. הפרק הקודם עסק בעבודת הבינוני. The last chapter dealt with the work of the בינוני. וחלוקה שבין עובד אלוקים לאשר לא עבדו. We discussed this at length. What does it mean an עובד אלוקים? Someone who actually is actively working to serve Hashem, or someone who doesn't serve him? Meaning, again, he's a בינוני, but he's not actually, he has the struggle. He doesn't have the struggle. שלא כצדיק, is not like a tzaddik. שאינו צריך לעבוד, כיוון שכבר הוא עבד השם. Unlike the tzaddik, who doesn't have to work because he already has reached the level of an Eved Hashem. Remember, it's the noun, it's not the verb, or the adjective rather. Because he's already achieved this perfection and perfect connection to God. But the Benoni is the one who always has to actively work. As is said in the last chapter, this is exactly what we're just talking about. The Benoni could be someone who still is not serving God. This is a little bit of repeat, sorry. He's got to the point where he doesn't do averot, he does mitzvot. But he doesn't do anything to progress. At that moment, even though he may be a very good person and someone who's God-fearing, he's doing mitzvot, and he fills all this, he checks all the boxes of being a Benoni. He's not called an Oved Elokim. So as we just said, the work of the Benoni can be at different levels. And on the one hand, it can be his struggle of the seductive senses of this world. It could be his struggle of being lazy to do a mitzvah. Or a different type of avodah. It could be a struggle with habit. That's what he does every day. Whichever way it is. Now, so I probably should have skipped that paragraph because that's a little redundant. It's exactly what you just said before. Sorry. Perek Zeh, this chapter. This chapter now is going to deal with the Benoni, who does serve God. He does have the struggle. We'll see also that an Oved Elokim, a servant of Hashem, is not just one linear level. Just like people can be divided into many categories in their type of nature, to him, their abilities, and their spiritual powers. So too is their avodah distinct and different. As will be explained in this chapter, there's nothing that you have internally that can stop you from being a proactive Oved Elokim. Now, why am I sharing with you this and the introduction, which we'll see now from Rav Ginsburg? Because I think that Rav Steinsaltz, I would have given a different introduction, which is the first time that I've actually seen that he didn't give the introduction I was hoping for. So we're going to look at one more thing. When we started learning the book, I gave a background on Chassidut. And I talked about the concept of Yechidut, or it's called Yechidus. What's Yechidus? When the person has a chance to be sitting alone with the Rebbe and talking to him alone. And if you remember, the Admor HaZaken, the author of the book, wrote this book because he got to the point where he couldn't do Yechidus with all of his Chassidim. He couldn't, it was just too much. So he wrote the book and said, basically, this is what I would tell you. So now Rav Ginsburg gives the following scenario. Nichnas aval Yehudi acher lichidut l'Rabbeinu. B'tana b'fiv. Another, before this, he made a reference to one thing. So now he's giving us a second case. Someone comes in, a certain Jew walks into the Rebbe and says, Asiti kechol asher ne'amar li. I did everything you told me. Lamati, I learned. Hidyagati, Evanti, behit bonanti. I schwitzed over it. I understood it. I thought about it. Asiti kol asher bicholti. I did everything in my power to follow what you're telling me. Lamrot zot, in spite of this, origati lidei ahavat Hashem belibi. I still did not come to a point where in my heart I truly felt a burning love for Hashem. But lo mishum shelo hintiagati maspeak. Not because I didn't put it in the time. I tried. Ma lai lasot. What can I do now? Ketzad uchal gam ani liot benoni. How can I be a benoni? Ulekayim be'emet et ratzon Hashem b'milu'o be'ofen tmidi. And at the same time, be a true benoni who's truly trying to keep the word of Hashem on a constant basis. So the teacher, the author, will then later tell us, there is such a reality, that in spite of all the introspection and spending time on this book, there are those kind of people, they won't come to the point of a burning love for God. And nevertheless, they too can and are able to become Beinonim, using some, which we're going to talk about probably not till next week, some abilities of introspection in their mind and their thoughts, which we're going to get to. So again, this chapter is going to deal with the idea that we've talked about the two types of love of Hashem. There was Kirish Pe'esh, the burning love. There was the Avav Ta'anugim, the very tranquil love of God. But they can't get to any of that. They do the mitzvot. They know they're supposed to have this love. They don't. Now, let's talk tachlis for a second. Walk into just choose any school, any yeshiva, any shul, any beit midrash, and ask people. I don't mean to do this actually, but I'm saying this is a theoretical issue. And ask them, I want to ask you a question. Do you keep Torah mitzvot? Vast majority say, of course, to the best of my ability. Now I'm going to ask you another question. Do you love Hashem? Of course. Shema Yisrael, we say, Hashem Elokecha. Of course I love Hashem. Now I'm going to ask you a different question. Be honest with me. Do you really go through your day, and especially when you're doing mitzvot, do you feel a true, strong love of God? Is it on your mind? Are you aware of it? Are you aware and mindful of your love of Hashem and you're thinking of it? The vast majority are going to say no. Tachlis, it's my guess. There will be people who say yes. I personally know a number of people who would answer yes without blinking an eye. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't. It's not a bad thing. It just means that their love of Hashem is not front and center. So therefore, they're going through the motions. They do have a struggle, so they're the Beinoni. They're going through the motions and the actions, but they're missing this one key component. So they say, okay, I'll be honest with you. No, I don't have that burning love of Hashem. What should I do about it? And that's what this chapter is about. What do I do about that? But before he talks about the what to do about it, which we won't get to tonight, he sets up the whole scenario of going towards that direction. So on your screen is the beginning of chapter 16. Gadol. Now, let me just tell you from here, let me just highlight. This, I mentioned to you last week, is the sum total of the entire thesis behind Hasidut Chabad. If you want to ask, how do I define what Chabad is all about, what the thesis of the Beinoni, the thesis of the author of Menachem Mendel, the Shlomo Zalman of the Yadi, the author of this book. This is it. The following is the rule, the general idea. What is the service of Hashem of a Beinoni? Ha'ikaru, the main point is limshol v'lishlot, to dominate and control al hateva shebechalal hasmali, to control or dominate and control the nature of the left side of his heart, metaphorically speaking, which was his Yetzer Hara, it was his klipa, it was the nefesh habahamit. How? Al yedei or Hashem hameir lenefesh elokit shebemoach, using his nefesh elokit, as it were, metaphorically speaking, shining the light of Hashem on this nefesh hasmalit, on the nefesh habahamit, v'lishlot al halev, and to also control and dominate his heart. Kishemitbonein b'mocho, when he contemplates in his mind, bigdulat ein sof barahu, the grandiosity of God, leholid mibinato ruach dat yirat Hashem, to create in his mind the understanding heart and mind, and yirat Hashem, the fear of God, b'mocho, in his mind, the otsur mera deoraita u'derabanan, that he doesn't go and do anything against the Torah, neither a rabbinic level, nor, I should go a little bit further with the highlight, by the way, sorry. Va'afilu isur kal shedivreihem, or even in a minor infraction that goes against the rabbis, the ahavat Hashem, and also through ahavat Hashem belibo, using the love of his Hashem in his heart, b'chalai ha'yemani, in the right side of his heart, b'chashika, b'chafitza, b'dovka bo, in this desire and this want to cling to God, b'kiyum ha'mitzvot deoraita u'derabanan, b'talmud Torah shekeneged kulam, that he should have this love, this desire, this want to constantly cling to Hashem through the avenue of mitzvot, both Torah-based mitzvot and Rabbanan-based mitzvot. Mouthful. There's a lot to take in. I should have highlighted by this entire, meant to highlight this whole thing. This is the essence of what Chabad Hasidut is all about. It is engaging your mind and your heart. Remember, Chochmah, Bina, Da'at. We talked about it many, many times. Engaging your mind and your heart to rule over you. Now, but it's not just to rule over you, but it's to engage yourself to the point of Hashem, of the love of Hashem. It's not just, no, I can be doing Torah mitzvot all day long, but if I'm not doing it out of love, there's a component that's missing, which we're going to come back to. We're going to take a look at a piece from Rav Steinsaltz that is going to shed a nice amount of light on what this introduction, this beginning of this chapter is all about. It's going to be not that short. Okay. Oh, wait, sorry. It sounds familiar. I just did that. Okay. The often kolel ma'od, in a very general way. Avodat benoni nimshol al hamshicha hativit. The general idea is that the work of the Benoni is to rule over his natural instinct, his desires for himself and his ego. How do we do that? By contemplating the grandiosity of the Ein Sof, of the infinite God. Pretty straightforward statement. As we said in the end of the last chapter, we said at the end of the last chapter that part of the avodah of the Benonit, on the most simple level, is to engage the ahava tivit. Remember, we call it the ahava mesuteret, the natural love that every single Jew has. Klomar, his personal connecting with Hashem, she'ena ba'a mikoach haregesh v'hakara kayemet. It's not because he's awakened some love in him to Hashem, but rather it's the natural love that Hashem has infused into him as a Jew. He wants to be a Jew. That's part of being a Jew. The true, complete, proper love of Hashem, of a Benoni, הנפש הבינוני עובד מכוחה. לא תהיה רק בשכבה התחתונה. It has to be where you are actively loving Hashem, through working, serving Hashem, not at the lowest level. הנמוכה יותר של קיומו, אלא בהיקף הווייתו כולה. It envelops him completely. Now, what does that mean in normal English? So you tell me to be a Benoni more than just the ahava misuteret level or the natural love of God. It's all stuff, you know what? Yeah, I love you, God. Great job. Another great day. I love you. Okay, that's like the basic. It's not striving. It's not growth. You need to infuse your life with the emotion, the clear, open emotion, and the expression in life. חשיבות הדבר היא שכיוון שאדם עושה דברים בשלמות הווייתו, בשיתוף כוחות נפשו כולם, בהכרה וברגש, אז יש לו התייחסות שלמה לדברים שהוא עושה. The more you put into something, the more it shows it's important. That's my words, not exactly his. For example, it's going to be your birthday, and instead of buying you a birthday card, I take out my colored pencils, I draw you a nice, beautiful picture of your favorite scene, I make a little poem out of your name, and I bring it to you in an envelope with a beautiful ribbon on it. Okay, that's different than just printing out a card from the computer. Both times you got a card, but what you put into it, the love, both of them may show the love, the connection, but it is only when you actually put more of your heart and soul into it does it make a bigger difference. However, when a person relates to Hashem, when he's lacking a certain element, this feeling that you have is not something that you're not experiencing, but you're giving that energy to something else that may not be kadosh. I'm going to give us an example we can relate to. It has to do with food. When a person's hungry, they want to eat. When you're hungry, what is your relationship now? That food is there and can satisfy your personal need and can complete you, so to speak. The Gemara Ne'emar, it says in the Gemara, before a person eats and drinks, they have two minds, they have two hearts. But when he finishes eating and drinking, he only has one heart. What does that mean? As long as a person's hungry, he can't focus on something else properly and completely if he's hungry. Because part of him still thinking about the food knows I'm really, really hungry. And someone wants to discuss something with me. My mind may not all be there because my mind's also on the eating. But at the moment the person eats, but when he's eating, he's into it. He's thinking about that food. He knows he needs it, he wants it, and he's doing it. He's completely into it, into that eating. Doesn't mean that a person generally is eating with all of the spiritual powers. He is aware of his appetite, his hunger. If we want to look at this from a different way, let's assume a person gets his lunch. It's a marak, a lechem, a basar, a liftan. He gets his soup and his bread and his meat and the side dishes. Now he gets it, but it's all mushed together in one glob. Sounds yummy. Technically, as far as the nutritional value, it's all the same, whether they're separate on the plate or they're all mushed together. And it could satisfy his appetite. But a person who sits down to eat that kind of meal, he's not going to be into it. He's going to see the mashed potatoes and this, and they're all mushed together. He could say, look, I know I need to do this for my health because I have to eat. He'll do the same action, he'll eat. But he won't really be into it as much. It'll only be partial. And sometimes it happens, a person puts on tefillin, and he's davening, or he's doing a mitzvah. He's only partially there. He knows he has to do it. He knows it's good for his neshama. Okay, what's he telling us here? I'm not going to read the rest of this thing. He's saying like this. Imagine you come in, it's been a long day, you walk into your house, you haven't eaten in hours, and you're really hungry. And someone was kind enough to put food on the table for you. And you sit down and you have a beautiful meal in front of you. It's set up beautifully, and the food's on the plate, it's all little separate compartments, and you're ready to go. In the meantime, your child is trying to tell you something. They need help with homework. Your next door maybe came over because they have a question for you. You're starving. You're hungry. So what do you want to do? Your focus is more on the food. So when you're talking to this other person, your mind's not really into that, right? So you really have two minds. Now he's left. The problem is over. Now it's time to eat. You're focused on the food. Your energy's on the food. Not only is it healthy for you, but you also know you're filling yourself up. Your mind is into it. You're connecting with that food. Same scenario, but now after that person is left, on your plate is all that same food, but it's all mixed together. It's just a big glob. Is it going to be as enticing? No. But you're hungry. So you know you have to eat. But are you going to be into it? No. You're not going to be into it. He says the same thing happens when it comes to doing a mitzvah, whether it's tefillin, challah, mezuzah, whatever it might be. We go through the motions sometimes. We know we have to do it because it's good for our, quote, nutrition. It's good for our spiritual nutrition. We have to do it. But when it's all, our minds are in other things and we're being sidetracked and our heart isn't into it, then it may be that we check the boxes. We have that spiritual nutrition. We ate that blob of food. We did that mitzvah as basic as we could, but it wasn't properly done. It's missing something. What's it missing? The connection. If you are a meat lover, or let's assume for a minute you're a meat lover. If you are I know Avram, I think you're a vegetarian. So let's use fish. You have a beautiful piece of salmon, the teriyaki sauce, the steam, the green beans next to it. It's just unbelievable. It is like your mouth is watering. You're looking at it. It's been put down in front of you on a piece of china. You've been given two beautiful sterling silver utensils to eat with, versus taking that same food, putting it on a paper plate with a plastic fork, and all the food that was originally beautifully set up is just piled up. Which one do you relate to internally? Do you ever sit down? Would you sit down at that kind of a meal and say, whoa, I'm just going to look at that for a minute. I'm going to take a picture and post it on Instagram. Look at that smushed up food. No, of course not. But tachlis is no different than what you had on the china. And it's just because it's mixed up and it's on a paper plate. It says this is the struggle that we deal with all the time when it comes to how do we do mitzvot? How do we engage our heart? How do we do that? So let's go back to the text for a little bit. Okay, make this a little bigger. Okay, just a second. So, like I said, what happens now when I've tried to do all this. I know this is the case. I know I'm supposed to engage my heart. I've learned 15 chapters of Tanya. I've learned Mesilat Yesharim. I learned Chovot HaLevavot. I go listen online to Shuri, and I know that. But something's still missing. I can't get that feeling to come out of me. V'yeter al kein tzarich leda kol gadol ba'avodah b'beinonim. There's another general rule we need to know when it comes to the service of Hashem of a Benoni. Im ein shegam im ein yad sichlo beruach binato maseget v'lidavat Hashem. Even when he doesn't have the ability to awaken this love of God, Behit galut libo, in the revelation within his heart. Shia libo bo'er karish be'esh. He's not able to awaken this burning love of God. He doesn't get to this point where he has this, I want to cling to God, I want to cleave to God, I want to desire God. Only he has this, as we talked about in the last chapter, this ahava mesuteret, that's all he's able to engage. For now, skip the parentheses. We're going to continue with Tahainu. Tahainu, shehad lev nevin beruach chochma uvina shebamocho gvulat ein sof baruch hu. He knows, he's aware in his brain, in his mind, the gedulat Hashem. He understands the grandiosity of God. Mamash, that right next to God, nothing matters, nothing at all. And that's why Hashem deserves love, nefesh kolchai, that everyone should turn to God, to be included in the light of God. He knows that intellectually, that in the eyes, in relative to God, we're nothing. He knows that we're supposed to have this love of God. He knows that it's appropriate that we should all turn to Hashem for this. But rather what's happening, let me just open my book here a second, look at my book. Hold on. I need to see something. So I think that interesting, this word, hold on a second. Oh no, let me keep reading a little bit more and then I'll explain. And also internally, he's aware that he should be turning to God for everything, to be consumed with the love and closeness to God, to take out of their case, so to speak, meaning from his body, the dof kabo, he should go beyond his body, meaning he should engage his neshama, and he should be doing all these things. But rak shabal korchan, just against his will, against their will. Lost the place. Instead, what's happening is that this love of God, or this person's neshama, is such that it's like this living widow. What's a living widow? It's an expression used in the Gemara and Midrashim, that a man has gone away. He's gone away to a faraway land, and he doesn't see his wife for a very long period of time. They're married, but he's not around anymore. She's like a living widow. What does that mean? He's out there. The love of her life is out there. Some great marriage they have, right? But there's no feeling now. He's so far removed from her, meaning that he's living a life where he knows that his neshama is there to engage. He knows that the love of Hashem is primary in being able to do mitzvot properly. He knows what he's supposed to do, but he cannot engage it. Not only that, actually, I'm not going to do this last line. I'm going to come back to that different next week. He's still setting up the beginning of this chapter. He's setting up this whole issue of how in the world does a person like this get to the point of engaging the love of Hashem? If you're telling me that to be a Benoni means to struggle, check. You're telling me I have to have a love of God, check. It's called Ahava Mesuteret. But you want me to have this mishpe'esh, this burning love of God, the desire, and to put my heart and soul into every mitzvah? I don't know how to do it. I can't. Not only I don't know how, I can't. I've tried everything. So what I want to do is to give you what he's going to tell us from a different perspective. Some of you are familiar, may be familiar with the topic. It's called codependency. Codependency is when someone is married to or in a relationship with an addict. They're called a codependent not because they are an addict, but because somehow they may be enabling the addict. There's a well-written, phenomenal book written by a woman named Melody Beatty. Some of you may know her book. It's called Codependent No More. If you know anyone who is in an addictive relationship or has some form of addiction, I can't recommend this book more than it's a great book. And what I want to do is to read to you something that she wrote. Oh, it's not here. I have to, it's a different screen. Just a minute. Get it up on my screen here. Hold on. I can't do that just a second. Hang in there 1 second, and then we're going to conclude. It's something very worthwhile. Okay. Let me do the screen share. Okay. There's something known in AA and NA and all the different, whoops, where I go. There. You should see the words daily meditation on top of your screen. Is that correct? Yes? Okay. There's a concept known as acting as if. I want to just read this to you real quickly. This is something Melody Beatty writes about. The behavior we call acting as if can be a powerful recovery tool. Acting as if is a way to practice the positive. It's a positive form of pretending. It's a tool we use to get ourselves unstuck. It's a tool we make a conscious decision to use. Acting as if can be helpful when a feeling begins to control us. We make a conscious decision to act as if we feel fine, and we're going to be fine. When a problem plagues us, acting as if can help us get unstuck. We act as if the problem will be or already is solved, so we can go on with our life. Often, acting as if we are detached will set the stage for detachment to come in and take over. There are many areas where acting as if, combined with our other recovery principles, will set the stage for the reality we desire. We can act as if we love ourselves until we actually do begin to care for ourselves. We can act as if we have a right to say no until we believe we do. We don't pretend we have enough money to cover a check. We don't pretend an alcoholic is not drinking. We use acting as if as part of our recovery to set the stage for our new behaviors. We force ourselves through positive recovery behaviors, disregarding our doubts and fears, until our feelings have time to catch up with reality. Acting as if is a positive way to overcome fears, doubts, and low self-esteem. We don't have to lie. We do not need to be dishonest with ourselves. We open up to the positive possibilities of the future instead of limiting the future by today's feeling and circumstances. Acting as if helps us get past shaky ground and into solid territory. This idea of acting as if, going through the motions as if you have this loving, burning desire for God, is going to be where he's going to go in the second half of the chapter. Something that he professes in the 1700s, and something a similar idea that the Minchat Chinuch, Sefer Chinuch mentions also, are things that were discovered in the 1960s by self-help gurus. The concept of trying to go through it as if you do have this love. We're going to see that. I don't want to shortchange it. Bezrat Hashem next week. I assume we'll still meet next week. Probably it will be our last class before Pesach, Bezrat Hashem. And I just want to also mention, I mentioned in my Navi class the other night, and mentioning now, and I'll send out a message in the next few days. I finished after 12 years, finished teaching Navi on Sunday night, and I'm going to move after Pesach into a tefillah class. We're going to learn about davening. We're going to learn not just what we're saying, but history behind it, what meaning behind it, why it is structured the way it is. A lot of stuff. I've done this class a couple of times over the last 25 years, and it takes a number of years to do. And hopefully we'll have some good amount of time together. But I'll send out information on that, Bezrat Hashem, hopefully sometime before Pesach. In the meantime, be a good Benoni. Have that struggle. You're going to fall. It's fine. Try to go a little beyond where you've gone till now. Go 1 inch out of your comfort zone. That's already fantastic. And if you don't feel that love, we'll talk about it next week. Bezrat Hashem. Have a great evening.